Welcome to Buckets. I am your host, Brandon Anderson, here with a little off-season content for you with Jim Turvey. Jim, it's the off-season, except it's not. The NBA Finals Game 5 is happening tonight as we record this, but the off-season's already started. We got a Desmond Bane trade breaking yesterday as of recording. It'll be a bit ago, probably by the time you listen to this one. But Jim, it's all happening. NBA Finals right in the middle. Off season. The draft is next week already. How you feeling about all things basketball?
I know it's pretty funny with the way the speed with what the NBA works. Like, if someone's listening to this in like a week or two, it's gonna be Desmond Bane. Oh, I forgot that happened. KD is now whatever KD is and all this stuff. So hopefully, I think the content of this episode will be very much not tethered to a specific moment. A thing or two might change here or there if we do get a KD move or something like that, but kind of zooming out, I think these big zoom outs that you and I love to do provide a ton of value, and hopefully can last at least 2 weeks, even in a crazy NBA.
Either the content will last 2 weeks of use, or it will last much longer weeks of us looking like complete idiots on the thing we're about to talk about. So what are we going to talk about today? Kind of a two-parter. Today we're starting with a very simple question. Who is the most likely team in the NBA to make next year's conference finals? Who's going to make the NBA Final Four 1 year from right now? Who would have thought that a year ago, Oklahoma City, sure, not a hard one to come up with. Minnesota, all right, they were there. Indiana was there, but would not have been a high draft pick for most likely to make it back. And New York probably wouldn't have been a particularly high pick unless, you or Joe Dallaire or half of the rest of our company was on, then maybe. Now, you guys are not even that big of Knicks homers usually on these. So is this bettable? Of course, everything is bettable. Everything is actionable. That's why Jim and I love to do this stuff, because there's always something to learn here. There's already one prominent book that has up odds next year to win the conference. That's not what we're doing today. We're doing make the conference finals. So you make the conference finals, you can win the conference. You're only 4 wins away from doing that. And so that's it. That's what we're going to do. We're going to draft. We'll try to touch on most teams in the NBA, but if you're here for Wizards content today, we're probably not going to spend a whole lot of time on you. We'll try to do like 10 longer picks, maybe 10 lightning picks, and then I'll whip around some of the other teams of why we didn't get there. So that's it. Most likely to make the conference finals. I gave Jim the option. Does he want the first pick or the second pick? The first pick is the most obvious pick on the board, and he wanted it. So I'm giving it to you, Jim. Who's the first pick of the most likely team to make the conference finals next year?
Yeah, and as you noted, this is actionable, but we are de-oddsing it. We are just saying draft the teams most likely, not at their current odds. And so this will be pretty funny as the resident, favorite skeptic. Guess what? When you don't put odds on it, I'm not a skeptic anymore. The number one pick is insanely obvious. It sets up the rest of my draft well as well. I think that the 2-3 is probably a pretty tough spot. I mean, the Thunder, man, like they are set up. I created maybe a term here, the ceiling floor, because they don't have a floor. Like the floor for OKC is they're going to be in the conference finals next year. I almost think it's like genuinely pretty hard to imagine a year in which they don't get to the conference finals again. They're set up incredibly well. They're the young, talented nucleus. If they want to go out and make a move, they can go out and make a move. They could bring in, Kevin Durant homecoming. That would be amazing. And they would do it. It wouldn't even change their roster. They could do it with picks. They could do it with young players who haven't even cracked their finals rotation, to be honest, but are like pretty genuinely interesting pieces. Like, are you telling me Aaron Wiggins couldn't be like a off-brand Mikal Bridges? Like, there's so much talent here in OKC that even though they have, and this will be a recurring theme, I think, throughout the podcast, that the Western Conference is a far more difficult path. That like you really want to weight that in your drafting. But it's OKC. Like their floor is incredible. They're going to win 60 plus games again. They're probably going to have, a near MVP caliber Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I have skepticism of them being handed titles at, minus odds, during the when they're not even there yet. But when you take out the odds, I think OKC is incredible. There's a reason at the beginning of the season, they were the team that I was all over betting. So to me, it's an incredibly obvious choice. We talked before the podcast. It was your number one with a bullet as well. Yeah. So thank you for being a generous host and letting me get what I think is like the incredibly obvious number one pick in this draft.
Yeah, I think obvious enough that it's boring to stay here too long, but I'll play devil's advocate for a little bit. we are taping before Game 5. What if the Thunder don't win the finals this week? What if whatever that scenario, barring it being like because of some major injury, they just lose. They lose the finals, and a few days or a week from now, whenever this is being listened to, the Thunder are not defending champions. Something went wrong. Is that going to sway you? Would you move off of this pick at all? Would you keep it but be a little less confident? How would that make you feel?
It's funny. I actually think you can almost make when you started to say I'm going to play devil's advocate, think about what we have seen from returning champions. Returning champions often haven't made it even to the conference finals next year. So this is one of those where it looks very obvious. And then, the time comes around. It's like, well, wait, that Celtics team that was a lock for the finals isn't even in the conference finals. That being said, I think that is obviously a possibility, but if you consider, that's like a tiny little wart on the pinky finger of a franchise that is set up so incredibly well that this is a nitpick for sure. It's not like, I wouldn't say, again, if we're doing odds, I'm not betting them at I think they're plus 135 to win the West next year. I'm not betting that.
Do not bet that right now. Don't do it.
Exactly. So there's a million little warts on everyone else. It's just, you can pick, again, it's not a minus money type thing for me, at least to lay that out. So yeah, I think you can nitpick them, but only to the degree in comparison, no one else is even in their realm, in my opinion. Now.
Yeah, I have them, like you said, clear number one with a bullet here. I have them 60% to make the Western Conference Finals, 33% to win the West. So basically, them versus the West field is 2-1 for the field. Even so, it's a terrible price at plus 135 to give your money at relatively even odds a full year out. That's not a futures bet to make. There will be other ways to invest in Oklahoma City. You kind of stole my other devil's advocate point, which was I was setting you up, but you saw where I was going. Trivia, do you know the last, assuming that the Thunder do win the championship, who is the last NBA champion to make it past the conference semifinals, to make it to this stage that we're saying, to the conference finals?
See, I would have, is it all the way? It's not even the Bucks. The Bucks didn't do it the next year. Is it all the way back? Is it back to the Warrior, KD Warriors?
It is, in fact, back to the Warriors.
Wow.
It is the Warriors, the year that they lost to the Raptors in the finals. And then the Raptors didn't make it back, and neither has any team since then. So it's been 2019 Raptors and forward. Every single champion has failed to make the conference finals the following season. Even, the Raptors is an interesting, unique case because they had Kawhi the 1 year. So that's not really a great test case. But how many of these other teams that look like, okay, here's the dynasty now, or here's, last year this time you could bet on will the Celtics win the next 3 championships in a row? Like, oh, turns out no. Turns out pretty tough to pull that off. So, yeah. All right, I'm going to go with the next pick. We said that number one wasn't really interesting, and then, as we do, we talked about it for a while, but it's the Thunder. My number 2 pick is on my board equally uninteresting. I have this team 45% to make the conference finals. That is a clear tier above my next group, and it's equally above my 3-4 tier as it is below Oklahoma City. Like, that's how strongly this pick came out for me. And it's kind of one that I don't think will surprise you now after our last podcast that we recorded about kind of how do we think about these players and teams coming out of this. Cleveland Cavaliers are my number 2 pick here. And I think the Cavs, like in a vacuum, shouldn't be a shocking pick. They were the 1 seed. They were fantastic all year. You were on them all year. They set up well. Donovan Mitchell was awesome in the playoffs. Evan Mobley was awesome in the playoffs, answered all the questions. Darius Garland stunk because he was injured. Darius Garland hopefully will not be injured. We don't know. He's a small guard. He gets hurt a lot. Jared Allen was up and down, but better than he'd been in the playoffs previously. These guys are exactly in their prime right now. Donovan will be 29, Allen 27, Mobley 24, still entering his prime, still getting much better each year. We should get a better version of him next year, and he is an All-NBA guy this year. They have a whole season with DeAndre Hunter now. Maybe they get back Ty Jerome on a discount when we kind of assumed he would be gone because, man, he lost a lot of money in the postseason. And again, it matters here for this draft. You only got to win 2 series. I'm not telling you the Cavs are going to have the talent to win it all. I just need them to win twice to get into the conversation. I mentioned at the top, part 1 and 2. Part 2, we're going to talk about title odds and a little bit different version of this. I think the Cavs, as strong as they should be in the East, they look to me a little bit like the new Jazz. We're going to win 55, 60 games. We're going to be the 1 or the 2 seed in the East that doesn't have the dominant Celtics, presumably next year. They should be a runaway favorite right now to be the 1 seed in the East. And if you're in the East as the 1 seed, you should be a pretty big favorite here. So right now the book has the Cavs at plus 330, about even odds as a 3-way favorite in the East. I'm not too excited to bet a plus 300-ish future this far out, but I would show clear value on that. I have them as a clear East favorite just because they're near 50-50 to make my Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, this is interesting. I thought there were going to be 2 teams above this. I was really excited to get them at the turn next time. So I had them as my 4th ranked team, and I was very excited to kind of buy low on them, so to speak. But also, yeah, the odds there currently there aren't the best price, but I think that the teams they're around, at least one of the teams I think should be much lower, to be honest. We'll get to them in a bit. But I really like this pick. Cleveland, I was on them all year, and I'm stubborn enough to probably be intrigued by them again next year. Certainly the floor. And again, this is to make the conference finals next year. It's not to win it. And I do think that is a very key differentiator for Cleveland, because I'm with you. I do think that they're a team is going to put themselves into position with a strong regular season to have an easier path, especially in the East, than we would anticipate. But I don't love the ceiling. I think each round that goes by is another round that Garland could get hurt, or Mitchell isn't quite enough to be the best player in a series. So I had them 4th, but I was eyeing them for sure, and in fact even had them bolded because I thought that would be a team that I could get with my second pick. So.
All right, well, you've got a tier of 2 teams, and you're going to have to make a choice between them now. Potentially, I have a tier of 2 teams. Maybe we'll just both get our next 2 if we're way off here. But let's hear your second pick and the 3rd pick overall.
So I have to do the other team in the finals. I think that Indiana has been to 2 straight conference finals and won this year, and now are in the finals tied at 2-2. So to me, there's not a whole lot to suggest this team is fading away. Carlisle has really kind of, I feel like the last 14 months have the Rick Carlisle stock is through the roof, and I think deservedly. And a lot of times, once you're established in that sense, people really kind of, then it becomes a thing, right? It's the Carlisle Pacers, this era, and you start to notice like, oh yeah, they do keep overperforming. Now again, it's an Eastern Conference team. So I've got 2 teams here. I've got 1 East, 1 West. I want the Eastern Conference team. I do still think that's the easier path. If we cut off the start of this regular season, Pacers could have been in that 1, 2, 3 seed type thing, with Boston theoretically slipping a bit. Sets them up to potentially be a 1 or 2 seed in the East, and really put themselves in good position to be in the conference final for the 3rd straight season. The biggest worry is, like we've said, it's really hard to keep doing this in this era, partly because these playoff runs are so long and so intense these days. I really do think that the effort level is beyond what even people realize. And that's part of what leads to either the injuries the next season or just being tired and worn down from a really long season. But if I were to pick a team that would be able to survive and thrive through that, it is the Pacers, and they're incredibly well-conditioned squad. So I'll take them with the 3rd pick. I don't love it. And again, their numbers plus 320, another one that I don't feel like you need to be on at this second. There'll be ways to bet them. Because honestly, they've been prone to a little weird slumps. Halliburton himself is prone to a little weird slumps. So I'll take them 3rd, but not looking to bet it just this second.
Yeah, I'm going to talk a lot about ages in these couple of podcasts. You want guys like 25 to 29, ideally. That's a prime. Today's NBA, early 30s, for a lot of players, still going to be mostly fine because primes are being extended. But you want young guys who have found the best version of themselves and then are still athletic enough and healthy enough to be the best version of themselves. Here are the Pacers for next year. Halliburton 25, just entering that prime window. Turner 29, still in there. Siakam 31, all right, we're getting near the edge, but should be fine still. Nesmith 26, Nembhard 25, Ben Mathurin 23, a little better version of Ben Mathurin. Jarris Walker, who hasn't even been able to play in the finals, 22, a little better. Obi Toppin 27. TJ McConnell, he's the one guy that's like, the KG veteran edging out a little bit there. But yeah, I didn't expect, I've been the Pacers skeptic. I didn't expect them to rank so high on my board. They're fourth on my board. They're right in this mix. They're basically tied with this other team in this tier for me. The only reason that I would be a little lower on them, especially compared to Cleveland, because of the swoons you talked about, and I think just because of the mileage off of this run, particularly their mileage with like pressing game after game and all these comebacks and everything, I don't know. This to me does not scream 1 seed next year in the East. So I think, maybe you still get to a 3 seed and you're probably fine, but it shapes up for a tougher path potentially. And, they've shown that'll be fine. You're going to have the better coach in a series. You're going to still have a shot in those series. But if I have Cleveland a more clear 1 seed, and you get basically a freebie and then face the 4 or 5, there's just a much easier path. Unless, of course, Indiana's the 4 or 5, then we might just get this year again. So yeah, I had the Pacers there. I was a bit surprised. I was thinking they were going to be my second pick, and I was going to have to be like, well, sheepishly, here I am picking the Pacers. So I'm going to go with the other team that I had then. I had a tier of 3 and 4 teams together, and then a drop to much bigger tiers after this. I'm just going to take the best player in the world. His name is Nikola Jokic, and he plays the Denver Nuggets. And I'm going to pick him, and I'm going to pick them. Jokic will be 30 next season. Jamal, 29. Aaron Gordon, 30. MPJ, 27. It's on the edge, but there's still another year or two. And if Jamal can be healthy for a run, this team was Game 7 away from beating Oklahoma City and making the conference finals. I personally will be high in the ceiling also to go further than that. If they've made the conference finals, then it probably means they're healthy enough. Probably means Jamal is playing a little bit better. To get there, then I think you can bet them a little further still too. They are plus 1,100 to win the West right now. That's 8% implied. Man, that's a bad number, I think. Denver is not a team that I necessarily need to rush to buy futures on because we know the injuries are going to happen. We know they're probably not going to push super hard in the regular season. They know who they are. But this core is the core. Maybe MPJ is not there. I don't know if I really hate that necessarily. They can find some other pieces if that's the case. But Nikola, Jamal, Gordon, they're all going to be there next year. They're going to be good again. I don't really need to tell you too much about that. David Adelman proved that he is ready for the job, I think, in the playoffs when we saw his coaching. I don't think there's a lot of flexibility here. We're not going to see some amazing new rookies come in. We're going to see some crazy growth development. We're going to see the team we know, and the team we know is really good and has the best player on the planet. So I'll take Denver. That's it.
Yeah, I have my big board. We both ranked our teams. I'm trying to mostly go in the order that I ranked here, but I was really close. I had Denver 5th on my board. I was really close to just taking them instead of Indiana because part of me is like, it is the best player in the world, and like you said, they pushed OKC to 7, and that was with like their pets' heads falling off. MPG couldn't raise his arm. Jamal's always dinged up. Aaron Gordon had a grade 2 hammy strain and somehow got like 11 rebounds. But again, the best player in the world is a very good place to start. And I agree with you that this, to me, I kind of went through and starred the ones that I'm like, oh, that is an actionable bet. I think Denver is very much an actionable bet. I'm with you in that I don't think you have to rush out to bet it because they don't really push. And that's the only, if I'm being devil's advocate now, that's my only fear is this team screams a 4-5 seed because you don't really drop below that with Jokic. But they don't really push, or like they do, but they get hurt. Like the regular season's not their specialty. Scream a 4-5 seed who has to go against OKC in the second round again. I think that's the biggest worry with them. So don't bet it. Bet it. I mean, you could do a sprinkle on it. Like I know Joe loves those free bets and throwing them on them to build a portfolio. I love doing that. But I only get to rush into it because the West is really tough. Like that OKC, there's a reason they're number 1 with a bullet. Now, to make the conference finals is different than to win it as well. So, but Denver is a team I definitely was very intrigued by. Did you have any final thoughts, or should I move to my next pick?
No, I'm intrigued now because if I've done the math right, I believe we still have one of your 2 or 3 teams left. So you're going to get a real bargain here with number 5 pick.
Yeah, I don't know if I love even this bargain, though. Like I said, I wanted to bump Denver up. I'm going to go with Minnesota. Again, the team that has been there 2 straight seasons. Ant is, I think he's still just 19 years old, right? He's almost becoming the Tatum with how we treat his age, but he is still incredibly young. There's rumors of potentially Kevin Durant going there. Now, with Kevin Durant at his age, who knows what that looks like? But this is a Minnesota team that I think their floor is really high. I think that series against the Thunder, maybe I'm just stubborn, even with, a pretty relatively comfortable win in that series for OKC. I think if Minnesota can improve their clutch time scoring, which Kevin Durant would be a great piece to have to either take those clutch shots or kind of at least take the burden off of Ant in those clutch moments. If they get better in clutch games, I think that that's a very close series. And I think that they can really hang with most of the teams in the West, and it's the floor too. Again, we're saying to get to next year's conference finals. I think the floor of this Minnesota team, when you have Anthony Edwards, you have Chris Finch, great coach. Yeah, there's a lot of talent there. Now, maybe Randall doesn't play at the level in the playoffs that he did this year, and maybe their path in hindsight was a little bit easier. Again, they were not favored in that first round series against the Lakers. I think that's a little bit of revisionist history there. But we've seen it from them. I want to see Ant's conditioning improve a little bit, and maybe that's a worry off of 2 straight, conference finals runs that they're a little bit burned out. But I think that the floor of this team is really high, and with some rumors of them looking to be active, they've been active in these off seasons. They haven't, played scared. They've really been looking to improve the roster, and they know that they have a guy in Ant that is the guy to, make the most of this moment. The things go quick in the NBA. You have a superstar like Ant, make sure you're giving him the best roster. So I had them third on my board, but it was kind of like do I want to take them? I think I have to take them here, though. I think there's a notable drop-off after this, at least for me. It sounds like you maybe even had the drop-off before them.
Yeah, I definitely had the drop before them. So I have a group of 5 through 10 on my rankings are like 20 to 25% to make the conference finals. And I think of the Timberwolves about 8th. So kind of middle of the pack in that group. Now, of course, let's be real. I'm the Timberwolves nihilist fan around here. So that's maybe part of it. I do think that the path this year in particular was like overinflated a little bit, how we're thinking of them. And it just, outside of Ant and McDaniels, I don't know if I know what's coming from this team next year. And maybe that should make me feel better because I don't really love the rest of the roster. Yeah. So maybe changing it out for Durant or for whatever is going to make me feel better. I felt like, to me, if we're betting on top 4 seed, and that should make you a conference finals favorite, then I think I'd feel pretty good here. I don't know, I think Minnesota, to me, is so matchup dependent in in a lot of the West is going to be that. But I had a hard time making them really much of a favorite in any series. And so when I say 20 to 25% here, let me help you with the math if you're listening. If you're 50-50 to win a series, and you got to win 2 series to make the conference finals, 2 50-50s is 25%. So we're right in that range of okay, you're about a coin flip to win 2 series, or maybe you're 60% to win the first round, 40% slight underdog second round. That's kind of the range where we're at. That's about Minnesota to me, as I think they're a team that when I don't know what the matchup's going to be a year out, I kind of put them in a coin flippy range or a 60-40 sort of range. And I don't know, to me, I don't think I can get there with them being 60-60 2 in a row. I don't know that they would be a clear favorite 2 straight series in the West, even though they just did that. I understand they were that, but I couldn't quite see it at this point. By next point next year, some of the teams will be injured and whatnot. I'm actually going to take Minnesota's first round opponent. I'm going to take the Lakers here with my pick. So I have the Lakers 5th on my board. Yeah, Luka and LeBron, I guess that's the case.
Yeah.
And I guess Austin Reeves. I don't know that either of us feels great about adding that to the case. But yeah, we know what Luka has done in the playoffs when healthy. I don't really feel like we got to see a healthy version that much with the Lakers. Maybe we don't. Maybe we just, you talked about conditioning. Maybe we're just not going to get that version. But I'd like to believe we'll get some version of that. I think JJ Redick was pretty good this year coaching, so I feel pretty good about that going forward. We know that they tried to go get Mark Williams. Have to assume they're going to go get some sort of center defender to kind of build the team around. Yeah, it comes to me similar to that 50-50 thing I just said. I have an easier world where I can see the Lakers as put it this way. I'm not putting Luka and LeBron lower than 50-50 against an imaginary opponent this far out. Can I see them being higher than that, at least against one matchup? Absolutely. I can have them favored slightly in one, coin flip in the other, because you got the 2 best players on the court in almost any matchup. So then they just end up kind of in this range. Of course, you have to dock a little bit for health because that's always in the equation. if I didn't dock for health, they would have been in my Denver, Indiana tier. That's what, like, right even with those teams. So that's kind of where I ended up with the Lakers toward the middle. And it's only appropriate, Jim, that we would end up with me dissing a Timberwolves pick and then backing the Lakers, just always protecting my heart over here.
Well, I reacted, but I'm sure this is where most people have had them. But you know me, I'm probably like, some people messing me about being a Celtics hater or Thunder hater. The Lakers, where I'm actually a hater. Can you guess what rank I had them on this board? It is patently wrong. It is wrong. But guess how low I had them?
You have them 8th.
I have them 17th.
Oh my gosh.
I just don't think this is a good team. I listen, I love LeBron, but there are so many health questions, and the age is at some point he's going to fall off a little bit. And then the Luka of it all, I each passing year, I know he was literally in the finals 2 years ago, so it's hard to, and this is just to make the conference finals, and he is a really good floor raising player. But in the West, you said about them having the 2 best players on the floor. I don't think that they will be the 2 best players on the floor in most series. And in if I think about the team that I'm about to pick, they would have the 2 best players on the floor, but I would still pick this other team, especially at odds. But I think I would pick them straight up. So maybe I'll use that to transition into my next squad. I'm taking the Houston Rockets. They were kind of the team we were skeptical of this year, but only because we hadn't seen it yet, and they were overseed. They were a 2 seed, and we didn't think that they quite matched up to that level. But listen, they got the bit of experience. We talked about it in our playoff Delta stuff. A few of these guys were proved themselves pretty solid. That was a really fun first round series. And now that they are a serious contender for stars this offseason, they really have a lot of assets to be able to move around. It sounds like they're in the mix for Durant. It sounds like Giannis maybe isn't moving, but it sounds like if he is, that they would be in the mix for that. If someone else's name pops up, Devin Booker, I'm sure they will be in the mix again. So this squad as a baseline, I'd be pretty interested in. I think that their floor, again, I keep saying floor, but floor is kind of what I'm looking at with these conference finals. I think that I don't see them winning a title next year, but I very much could see them winning a couple rounds. And especially because I think, again, kind of similar to some of like a Cleveland in the East, I think they're going to have a really good regular season record again. Now, they did it this year, and it didn't end up mattering because the West is really, really tough. So maybe I should have gone with an Eastern Conference team here. But none of the Eastern Conference teams were leaping out to me, to be perfectly honest, at this tier. So I'm going to go with Houston. They are, right now, if we look at the actual odds, Minnesota is second at plus 550, and then it is the Rockets third at plus 750. I think some of that is baking in all the rumors. I think the books really love to list a team that has rumors circling around them higher because people love that. But I think this Houston team's really solid, really aggressive front office, and if I'm buying this second, I don't mind having them on my squad for next year to make the conference finals.
Yeah, I had the Rockets at the top of my next tier down, so they're 11th for me, but I understand it in this range, and the hard part is factoring in, what is the upside of the star player? Who's the star player, and what's the chance they get him? For me, kind of just to math it out a little bit, I said, okay, 25% chance they add some star player to the rotation. In that scenario, the Rockets jump to 3rd on my board, but I'm only giving that a quarter of a chance.
Yeah.
I think the difference for me is I see the regular season floor, but I'm not really buying that as being particularly valuable in the playoffs yet. I think even still another 2 seed run probably still makes them, for me, an underdog twice to make the conference finals, even still after that, depending on matchups. But so to me, 75% of that scenario where you're in the mix and you have a shot, and you're not huge underdogs because you probably have home court, but there's the really good scenario. I kind of came out somewhere middle of the pack. But yeah, I think too, the other part of it is Şengün is 23, Jabari Smith is 22, Amen Thompson is 22, Jalen Green is on the team. There are so many people out there. Reed Shepherd was my number 1 pick on my draft board in a weak class last year, contributed basically nothing this year. Yeah. He'll be 21 next year. What can he be as hopefully not nothing next year? So just a team with a ton of flexibility, but a ton of upside already right there on the roster. What if Amen leaps into All-NBA next year? I think that's possible. Literally leaping into All-NBA. What if Reed Shepherd takes a leap? Jabari Smith's been very inconsistent. Tari Eason, just so many guys on the team. And yeah, I see a lot of paths there. So I definitely don't mind that one. I'm laughing because we talked that we come out of the gate swinging with, you got to pick teams in the East. The East, it's so winnable. And here's the picks. Number 1, Oklahoma City West. 2 and 3, Cleveland, Indiana. We stuck to our guns for 2 picks. And then we go in Denver, Minnesota, Lakers, Houston. The number 8 pick, I'm staying out west, Jim. I'm taking the Warriors. I can't get away from the Warriors. I still think with Jimmy Butler and Steph and Draymond, I understand that there is a low chance that all those guys are healthy. I'm factoring that in. That what do I have? I think I have them like a 40% chance of those 3 being healthy enough to make a conference finals run. A 1-month health, 40% to get all 3. But I think if they have all 3 of those guys, I believe in this team, and I think we should believe in them from what we saw in this very playoffs. I think Steph and Butler worked very well together. I understand the trio is ancient. I talked about the age thing. Steph 37, Butler 36, Draymond 35 next year. That's why my odds of them being healthy for a month of playoffs together is below 50-50. But I think if they are that, they're still going to have a chance to make a run because we know that that is still what this team is. Again, title? Probably not, because you had a whole extra month now of all that attrition and injury stuff. Do I want to bet it? Probably not, because it's a year away and all the injury stuff's going to happen between now and then. The odds will be lower. But if it gets to March, April, and it looks like the guys are healthy, and it looks like, they're going to probably be trying to just stay out of the play-in again, because that's all you can do when your core is all past their prime and then some. They're going to be like, here we are again. The Rockets are the 2 seed. What a great season they've had. The Warriors are the 7 seed. Boy, you know who has a really nice path to the conference finals out there in the West, not on the OKC part of the draw. Like, I just feel like we could see that with the Warriors. We know what they are. I don't think we need to say too much more about them.
Yeah, honestly, I had them around this range. I had them 13th on my board. And you mentioned that trio. Even if you throw in, I think Pods is a pretty interesting player. And that group of 4 was a plus 16 net rating in 277 minutes. I think I'm just more skeptical. I'm like very skeptical that they stay together. Sure. And I think I'm pretty skeptical of what happens if even one of them is missing. And we saw
agreed.
Jimmy could not carry, just Steph was missing. I think if just Jimmy is missing, honestly, it would be tricky. And even if just Draymond was missing. So I think any one of those players, and then it's suddenly like, man, this is a little dicey.
To be clear, when I said 40% healthy, I gave them 0% odds of making the conference finals if not all 3 are healthy. Like that's I'm agreeing with you. It's got to be all 3, and they still have to win after that.
Yeah, 100%. So I at this point, you're that's a little bit baked into where we are in this draft. But I just felt there are a few teams that potentially had an easier path, including I will bring us back to the Eastern Conference. And it's going to be, you know where it's going. It's my squad for next year, the Orlando Magic. And this is really funny because this was going to be my squad regardless. I had really kind of picked them out of, oh man, this was kind of a year from hell. They had the Paolo oblique, then they had the Franz oblique, then they had the Jalen Suggs mega long-term injury, which really was very impactful. If you look at their record with and without Jalen Suggs, it really did matter. And now we had an Eastern Conference kind of opening up with these young players finally going to, theoretically, stay healthy together. Then they got Desmond Bane, and listen, I love the trade. I think you're a little bit more skeptical of it, but the fit in terms of if you're just saying, does this make them more likely to make next year's conference finals? 100%. Unfortunately, sports books know that as well. So if we had timed this a week before, it probably would have been a best bet. I probably would have been saying bet the Magic at a nice long number. Now it's a number that I think is about accurate, and we talked about this briefly on the buckets that when you're listening to this will now be a couple weeks past, but talking about how you want to let all the other news settle in and then go back to Orlando once people have kind of forgotten. There's no rush on this. This number is not going to shrink more than it did. If you got it right, as the news broke and the number hadn't moved, I like that. I do want to be on this Orlando team, but now that the number's settled in, I don't think you have to rush to it. They're baked in as basically the 5th favorite, kind of right in a tier with the Celtics as well as kind of like that plus 800 type tier. I think that's pretty accurate. But I will be looking to invest in them in betting ways in the upcoming season for sure.
Yeah, I was going to say, last time you took the Rockets, I was thinking, why not just take the East Rockets, which is what I think is the Magic's path here, is have that super high floor defensively, and can you find enough offense to be a middle-of-the-pack offense? They were a bad offense, so Desmond Bane is not going to suddenly make them a good one, but can they be middle of the pack not to win a title, but to win a couple of series and get to the conference finals. We'll talk a little bit more about the Magic. I'll save some of my thoughts for them on our other version of this podcast when we do title odds somewhat. I'll have more to say there. I'm going to stay in the East because, Jim, it's the 10th pick and the Eastern Conference favorites are still on the board. I was like, okay, Jim, is it your team, the Magic, or your team, the New York Knickerbockers? I'll take the bullet. Here I go. Lakers, Warriors, Knicks. Boy, am I just chalking right down the draft here, I guess, leaving you all the fun teams. Look, I have the Knicks 8th on my board. Where do you have them on your board?
14th.
Wow. I have the Knicks 7th. You have them 14th. They're going 10th. They should not be the conference favorites for next year. Please don't bet that. I don't understand. Again, they're co-favorites with Indiana and Cleveland. We took Indiana and Cleveland 2nd and 3rd in this draft. I'm going to say part of that is probably because of the not strength at the top of the East and because we aren't giving the Knicks the respect that the books are giving the Knicks. And, of course, that's handled. Those bets are going to come in either way on New York. We'll see. We'll see if they ever are able to find a coach. I've been watching my cell phone. It could be one of us where we're getting down there on the list of possible names. Probably they'll have a coach by the time you listen to this one. The talent is there. Obviously, Jalen Brunson is great. Karl-Anthony Towns is great. Like, they should have one of the better starting fives in basketball. This should be, without odds on our board on this draft, this should be a value pick. I don't mind getting the Knicks 10th overall here. I wasn't expecting to be that excited to take them, but if the East is open and there's a lot of talent on that team, I think by talent, we just saw this year, the Knicks, only a couple weeks ago, have the more talented roster in a conference finals matchup. We just saw that happen, in my opinion. Why couldn't that happen again a year from now? I think it's very much in play. I don't know that I love the build for a title-winning team, but could they win a couple of series? We just saw it happen. I think it could happen again.
The coach thing is pretty big to me. Now, I think they'll end up on a decent coach, but part of it is this new coach probably won't have the regular season floor that Tibbs had, which will probably mean a lower seed, which will probably mean a tougher path in an Eastern Conference that Boston got worse, Orlando got better, and that middle is actually a little bit tougher than it used to be to kind of get through that kind of 4-5 tier. I would rather have Orlando than New York personally. Now New York, there is the possibility of like Orlando made their move, and so a little bit is baked in of New York. Can they make their move? But I don't know. I was New York skeptic in the Pacers series, and just kind of New York. I was Celtic skeptic, but then I wasn't even Celtic skeptic enough to bet the Knicks against them. So I clearly have just been kind of out on this Knicks team. The Brunson thing is awesome, but he's one of the rare small guards who hasn't broken down, and maybe that's a credit to him. The pro Tibbs people are always like, you got to play 40 to play 40. This is like you were born in the darkness, like Bane. Like that works until it really doesn't work, and people break down. And I will probably be a Knicks skeptic next year. I was a Knicks skeptic in general this year. Didn't really work out. I mean, they won a ton of games and made the conference final. They had a great season. But I'm not going to run it back with them. I am going to move to a team that I was sure that you were going to take.
Let me reset the board real quick, because we're through 10 picks. So here's the 10 picks so far, and then we'll kind of lightning around here for our next 10. So I'm on number 1 at the top, Oklahoma City. 2 and 3, Cleveland and Indiana, our lone Eastern teams up at the top. Then Denver, Minnesota, Lakers, Houston, and Warriors were 4 through 8. A lot of West teams. Now we're back to the East, Magic and Knicks. And this is giving a little bit too much strategy away for you, Jim, but my next 7 picks on my board are still all in the East also. So I got a lot of East teams coming. Please don't adjust your draft too much accordingly since I've given that away. But you were up with the 11th pick. Let's lightning round through here to 11 to 20.
My top one is an Eastern Conference team, so I will take this team. And my note here was I would love to force Brandon into drafting. I kind of thought that you would draft this team. I was surprised the number as long as it was, but I think that people will be surprised that they lasted this long. It's Boston. It's the team that was, until a month ago, the team. The market loved them. They were the prohibitive favorites. And obviously things will look a lot different after that Tatum injury. But I think if there was no context and Tatum didn't exist on this Boston team, this team still probably wins. Like, we don't think of Tatum as, like, if anything, we've been Tatum skeptical at times. Now that he's gone, it can't be like, oh, he's the reason they're, the 10 seed in the East. This team probably wins 50 plus games. I mean, we don't think Tatum. Do you think Tatum's a 10-win player? How many did they win this season? I think they won 60,
the
right?
problem to me is it's not how many wins Tatum is, but it's what does Boston think they are without Tatum next year, and
Yes.
do they have a soft reset year? And I think to me, Boston. Not to cut you off, I'll let you finish, but I think Boston, by culture, is still going to be in the mix. They're still going to win games. They're still a playoff team, or at least a high play-in team. They're going to be in the actual playoff next year, and they're going to have winning culture and a chance to win some series. So they would have been my second pick from now. So they were basically right in the spot on the board. But yeah, to me, it's a concern about not just Tatum, but what else do they decide to do in sort of a step back year. Did that factor in for you at all?
Yeah, I had biggest worry is them selling off some pieces. But I was thinking about this when you were talking about Houston, and you said, 25% likely to get a star. And I was like, man, that seems low. And I was like, you know what? Things don't happen a lot more than things happen, especially when that comes to NBA rumors. Things don't happen a lot more than they happen. If you just run this Boston team out without Tatum, I think they're probably in the tier of the favorites for this conference. Now, I do think it's fair to bake in some natural skepticism, but Derek White, now Drew Holiday has slipped a little bit. Here's the flip side of that, though. I trust this front office about as much as any front office out there. Brad Stevens, if he wants to go for it, he's going to bring in a piece or two that is going to be able to get them back. Now, the worry is a new ownership, coming in. Do they want to save money? Do they want to move off of certain contracts? You use this as an opportunity to soft reset. If you're betting this, you're betting the stasis, the thing that doesn't happen, and that they just roll this team out there. If you roll this team out there, I think getting them at this level is actually, and plus 750 to win the conference finals. I don't mind the ceiling of it, of just ironically like a stasis ceiling, like with the Rockets, it's like baking in, what move do they get to make? With Boston, what move don't they make? They just roll the ball back out there and let this squad go at it again. So I think that at this point in the draft, there's question marks galore about everyone. So I don't mind taking Boston, and it'll get some Boston haters off my back, hopefully.
Yeah, I thought I might have to take them, but I'm going to take the team I thought you were telling me that I was going to have to take. I'm going to take the Philadelphia 76ers. Yeah. And this is actually by my odds and numbers, this will be my favorite pick in the draft. Like, I have the Sixers a clear top 10 in my draft order. I have the Sixers third most likely of East teams to make the conference finals, because I only care about the positive outcomes for Philadelphia, and I know how bad the bad outcomes are. I'm factoring those in. I'm factoring in like a 0.25% or a 25% chance of just nothing, like not even a playoff team like we just saw. I'm factoring in 50% of just a mediocre squad. But the mediocre squad is still going to have some mediocre version of Embiid and Paul George, still Tyrese Maxey, still a chance to win playoff series. That, like we talked about, teams like the Magic and some of these other teams coming up. I don't know that mediocre Philly has a really much worse chance to win a series than those teams do against a random Eastern team. Could that team hang with even a Cleveland or an Indiana? There are no juggernauts in the East that are just like, oh yeah, they're going to take mediocre Philly to town. But there's the upside. What if Joel Embiid is still in there? More likely, what if Paul George has a bounce back? We've seen that in his career already a few times where he bounces back. If Embiid is just done, then this pick is wasted. But I don't know enough to know if Embiid is just done. I was very down on Philly and Embiid coming into the season because there were a lot of signs at the Olympics and elsewhere that he just wasn't healthy and ready. Well, now he's had a year to kind of get back to that. He's coming to age 31. That's not great for a big man, but it's not death necessarily. I think the Sixers in both this draft and in the title draft that we're going to do, I think the Sixers are being slept on. I think the Sixers upside, which is all that matters in the NBA, is can you get there? Like they are, to me, maybe they're the new Clippers of they're just going to be this theoretical team that probably will never actually do it. But there's a pretty good chance in the next couple of years that somewhere along the way, they're going to actually be healthy. One of the years at least and have a shot at it. They're plus 1,700 to win the East right now. I have them 22% to make the Eastern Conference Finals. That is my third highest team. And if you made the Eastern Conference Finals, you have a shot. That's under 6% implied to win the East. Even if you are like a 3-1 underdog there, that still is a ticket worth having. So probably of everything we're doing today on the pod, this is the one that I've got to put a Philadelphia in the app as a pick and then stare at it and hate it all next season as they suck again and are completely irrelevant. But I think Philadelphia has real value in the market right now.
No, I mean, they're a 100% team you want to play the extremes on. And listen, you talked about Embiid and Paul George. I don't think you even mentioned Tyrese Maxey, Jared McCain in the third pick. Like, the talent on this roster is like very, very deep. Now, Embiid, he hasn't made a conference finals when he was healthy, let alone, now that he's moved into the even less healthy version of his career. I had him around this. I had him 12th on my board as well. I think they just went basically 11th or 12th. So I'm with you in being at least intrigued. And then when you add the number onto it of what tier that they're being priced at, I do think that there's some interest there. I wouldn't have them as, I'm not quite as high on them as you, but I do think that there's some interest to be had with Philly in general on the extremes, right? They just don't have a natural shaped distribution.
All right, I feel like we have kind of run through the teams most interesting to say much about. So let's do some like 30-second picks and bullet through a few more here. 13th pick, you are up. Who you got?
I got 3 Western Conference teams I want to at least talk briefly about. I think the Spurs kind of they're the big jump team, right? They got Monk Wemby out there. They've got De'Aaron Fox, and maybe, the second pick, maybe a star. Fox and Wemby only played 112 minutes together. It wasn't really all that good, minus 4.4. But long term, I do think that is a fit that I'm at least intrigued by. And listen, if you're going to have, like, you took Jokic and the Nuggets, second or third, fourth? Very high in the draft, because it's like, this is the best player. Wemby's going to be in that tier of best player. And to get them at this point, their number to win the West is plus 1,100. So the number itself isn't all that good.
The same as the Lakers and Nuggets, which I think is patently absurd, personally.
It is. But I think that there is interest here in general in them. So I'll take them with this pick. I could go longer, but I'll save some because we're already running long.
Yeah, I thought I'd have the Spurs higher. I think it's too soon. I think it's next year is too quick. Maybe that's wrong if Wemby takes a leap, especially if they can get Durant or some other star in there. I ranked 19 teams for this draft. The Spurs are 19th for me. They were my last pick on the board. So yeah, we'll say more about them on our next one. I'm going to keep the next one very easy here. I'm just going to take Giannis. I don't like anything else around him. And to be clear, I'm going to take Giannis by taking the Bucks and hope that I am taking Giannis by taking the Bucks. Otherwise, this pick is dead instantly. It might be dead anyway because I'm not expecting Dame to play and the rest of that roster is trash. If you have Giannis, you can win a couple series. End of argument.
I had this one as actually kind of maybe one to bet at plus 2,800. It really sounds like Giannis is staying. And if you have Giannis in the East, I think Giannis can get you to the conference finals. We didn't see it this year, but I think that there are paths that could break for Milwaukee. So they were 15th on my board with a interested in betting them. I'm going to go with another team that has been kind of derided in the past, but I'm vaguely curious on this team. I think I'm going to be betting this team a decent amount this year. The Dallas Mavericks. I was eyeing them even before, like after the Luka trade. If everyone was super out on it, and I'm not here to defend the Luka trade. The Luka trade still was patently terrible, but what it did do is make them a win now team that's pretty interesting. They have Kyrie, Clay, Cooper Flag, Anthony Davis, and Derek Lively as their starting 5. But they've got depth too. They've got their backup 5 could be Dante Exum, Max Christie, Najee Marshall, Caleb Martin, Daniel Gafford. And they've even got like playable dudes beyond that, Spencer Dinwiddie. So they've got the top end talent of like a Kyrie and Anthony Davis. And then they've got depth too. I think, the West is really tough, and there's a lot of question marks of what can Kyrie and Anthony Davis stay healthy for sure. That's the biggest question there. But if this team's healthy, I'm going to really be very interested. I don't think there's any rush to bet this team because I don't see this as a 60-win regular season team. This is a 44-win team that draws the Houston Rockets, in the first round. And then I'm like, okay, this Dallas, things broke nicely for Dallas. They're healthy right now. Let's get all in on Dallas now. So they were 10th on my board, so I'll go with them.
All right, I'm going to stick with the East, and I'm going to try to take Giannis again with a shot here. I'm going to take the Toronto Raptors because I've seen slight rumors of Giannis or KD or some of those stars. It's Masai Ujiri, so you never know who they could try to come up with. I continue to be intrigued by this roster. I don't really know what it is that they're doing, but I've talked about the age thing. Scotty Barnes will be 24. Brandon Ingram, 28. Quickly, 26. RJ Barrett, 25. Pirtle, 30. These are all dudes like I'm not saying this is the same, but if you just look at the names on this roster coming into the year, right now the Pacers are playing in the finals with a chance to win it all. And if you look at the roster, you're like, man, all these dudes, like just good dudes, all in their prime. How did we ignore so much talent just sitting there? Clearly, very different team makeup here. But the Raptors were like a top 3 defense for a half of the season this year as things came together. There's a lot of talent defensively there. I don't know how it all fits together. I don't know if I believe in the coaching. It's just a shot. It's a shot in the East. I actually have the Raptors 14% to make the conference finals, which is like a shockingly high number. I don't understand it. I'm probably pricing in. I think when I did this prep was maybe while there was more likely a chance it looked like Giannis was leaving, and I was kind of calling them and Houston maybe among the favorites. So I even lowered them a little bit here, but it's just a shot on the Raptors and some upside in the East with a roster that has moving parts and pieces I could get on board with.
Yeah, I think if you ask the average NBA fan, where's Brandon Ingram, they wouldn't say Toronto.
Yeah.
I don't think it's even aware that he is out there, and not that he's a great talent. They've got pieces, and pieces can become something interesting. So don't hate that. I'm going to buy even lower on a team that is probably right now getting a lot of bad press. They are currently, to win their conference, they are plus 6,000. Memphis Grizzlies. It was like 4 months ago I was betting this team to win the title. Now getting rid of Bane is obviously potentially a step in the wrong direction. Like if that is like kind of the approach and they're selling off pieces, this ticket's burned up. But you talked about this, Bane wasn't all that great last year, and the team still was decent. We talked about it in our playoff delta. I talked about how Ja Morant surprised me and that he actually is a very good playoff performer. They have their ability to draft really good talent time and time again is incredibly impressive. And now if they're actually trading Bane to kind of free up some capital to make a move for someone like a Kevin Durant, they're to me 60-1 for an organization that has time and time again kind of found talent like the Memphis Grizzlies with the ceiling that they have. I think that's a pretty interesting number, and one they'll probably just sprinkle with one of those free bets or something. But I think that this is like the time when you want to buy low on Memphis and not and wait to buy in on Orlando. So 60-1 too long, I think.
Yeah, I agree with the timing thing. I ended up taking Memphis basically off my board here. I had them about in this range, and I was just like, man, I don't know. I'm not that excited about even the upside now with not even that I'm so high on Bane with the team, but it just removes a layer of upside with that trio that I could be excited about. The theory of the trio, it's not a trio anymore. Yeah. It's a duo. And so I just, they would be around this range for me, a few spots lower. Yeah, I don't have too much more to add there. I don't have too much to say about this pick. I'm going to call this my Giannis portfolio. I'm taking another swing at Giannis because it's that part of the draft. I want to stay in the East. I'm taking a swing at God knows what this roster will be, but maybe something. The Brooklyn Nets. I don't know what there is to say over there, but there's a ton of cap room. They're in New York. Maybe they'll get some guys in. We've seen Brooklyn do it a few times. Everyone's been talking about how it's going to be this crazy offseason summer. They're the one spot. Like, they're set up to be the Clippers of a few years ago. Of this, like, hey, you know what? These two stars want to go play together somewhere. Brooklyn's the spot that they could do it, whatever that is. So that's it. I don't really care about the players. There's interesting talent a little bit. They got contracts and picks and stuff that they can move. Maybe I get lucky with this pick and get Giannis or some other star and have the East and have a path there.
Yeah, I feel like this part of the draft, you've really approached going for like assets and pieces. And I'm kind of like holding on hope for teams that I'm like, oh, I see some talent there. And I think if this team I'm taking here, if you squint, this team lost to the Knicks in the first round in a series. I think you probably think they were the better team. The Knicks then lost in a series where arguably, if that game one, which was one of the craziest games of all time, flips, they're hosting a game 7 against a team that's 2-2 in the finals. You do that squinting and twisting of narratives, and the Detroit Pistons are pretty interesting. We get Cade, who looked awesome in his first playoff experience. I really was impressed with him, even if the numbers weren't perfect. Really, just he looked like he fit on a playoff basketball court. You've got some experience for a young squad in general, and a front office that seems like it's fine going for it. Theoretically, their second best player, Jaden Ivey, wasn't even around for this playoff push. Now, I think, there's some questions about fit for Jaden Ivey and things like that. There's probably questions about, their long-term ceiling with Bickerstaff, who kind of tended to stall out in the postseason with Cleveland. But I kind of love grabbing Detroit all the way down here. I think that, Cade alone is a really good piece to have. And in the East, and again, if you squint, you can kind of see this team beat us, and suddenly you're squinting and you're in the finals. I don't think this is a finals team, and I do have some questions about the ceiling, but at this point, I'll take the Pistons.
Yeah, the Pistons were right in one of my next couple of teams. I'll stick with the East for a last pick here. I probably should be picking the Clippers if I'm sticking with my just like taking swings on upside shots. But I told you in the last pod, I'm done with Kawhi, so I'm not going back to the well. It's going to take a boring Hawks team here. Trey will be 27. Jalen Johnson should be healthy again. I know you love Jalen Johnson as one of those guys that's just very valuable being out there. Dyson Daniels, super young. We'll see what he does with another full season. You know, we just saw the Hawks make the conference finals not too long ago with Trey and with a different version of this team. That this could be a better version. So I'm just kind of building out the East portfolio of like, well, let me just get as many East Flyers as I can in my draft and see if I get somebody that accidentally makes a run. So that's the Hawks. We are about time here. So let me just quickly run back our picks. And then we're not going to talk about all the other 10 teams, but if you have a couple others you want to comment on briefly, you can do that. So, from the Tommy John studio, here are our 20 draft picks. Oklahoma City, number 1. Cleveland and Indiana, 2nd and 3rd. Then in the West, Denver, Minnesota, Lakers, Houston Warriors. Then at number 9, the Orlando Magic and New York Knicks at 10. 11 through 20, Boston, Philadelphia, San Antonio, Milwaukee, Dallas is number 15. And then 16 to 20, Toronto, Memphis, Brooklyn, Detroit, and Atlanta. Any other teams you feel the need to comment on before we get out of here?
I'm gonna shout out 2 Western Conference teams, and then I want to hear who your last overall team was. So for 2 others, the New Orleans Pelicans, I feel like should be shouted out. I mean, the Zion situation looks really sketchy. Really hate to see any of that. They're shopping Trey Murphy potentially, but they're also literally 1 season removed from being a 49-win team. So I just want to, sometimes things look so terrible. And then it's like, wait, did we forget that they have the talent here? The other one, the color me intrigued. I'm going to be on this team in some way next year. I had them 25th on my board, so not in the conference finals, but Portland. They had their 5-man unit of Jeremy Grant, Anthony Simons, Denny Advia, Tamani Kamara, and Donovan Clingan were a plus 34.8. Now we're talking 70 minutes. This is not a huge sample size. But Portland interests me. Portland is going to be a great hipster team to maybe bet to make the play-in or kind of bet to, those alt wins, maybe do a poor man's Detroit because the West is much tougher. But I'm going to be interested in Portland. And then I want to hear if any teams you have thoughts on and then who your last overall ranked was.
Yeah, I really only ranked 20. I basically had any team that I was like 0 to 2% by my math. I just kind of counted as 0. So I just looked through. I have 4 teams I counted as 0% likely. Portland is one of them. I think it's just too early. I could see the play-in hype. I could see them making a run, winning 2 series with that roster. You're winning 2 series with Scoot and Shaden as just like 21 and 22-year-old playmakers. That's just not a team I'm going to bet on. Can you guess who my other 3 0% teams are on the list?
Charlotte.
Not Charlotte, because I have them like 1 or 2% because of the East. There's 1 East team and 3 West teams.
So here's my dead last team, and I think this will surprise some folks. I had Sacramento dead last. Are they a 0% for you?
No, I had Sacramento as 2%. Okay. I had Phoenix at 0%. Wow. Assuming a Durant trade. I just was like, nope, out. I have Utah 0%. And I'm gonna call my last just for the brand. My 30th ranked most likely conference finals team, your Chicago Bulls, the hometown team. What a trash roster. I don't know what they're doing. They don't have good picks. They don't have young. There's no upside there. There's no like, I can't believe this guy made a leap. And now there's nothing. There's nothing there. It's an awful path to nowhere. There's nothing for me to even like imagine getting excited about by next year. So the Bulls are my last place. Did you have a last place?
That was basically how I saw the Kings. I saw them as all of that, but you're also in the Western Conference. There's not a world in which I can picture that roster winning 2 series in the Western Conference, and there's no path out of it that I can picture. I had Utah at 28 because sometimes if you have a lot of assets, things can come together quick, and suddenly you are a squad. The Kings don't have assets. They're stuck on the treadmill. I think Chicago and Sacramento are very fitting hand in hand as our 2 30th ranked squads.
Hand in hand indeed. All right, that's going to wrap it up for our most likely to make the 2026 Conference Finals NBA Draft. We'll get more off-season coverage coming to you soon live from the Tommy John Home Studio. We'll catch you next time. Let's get buckets.